April 27th, and our first OTA updates over the air, which means they can change the game without a big download, is live for Marvel Snap. These changes are only capable of changing numbers on cards. This includes cost, power, as well as numbers contained inside the text box, but they cannot actually change the text of cards in these updates. Those will still be reserved for the bigger patches. Let's go ahead and dive on in to see what exactly we have going on here. Starting with a Shawna Buff. That's definitely a card that could use some love. We are going from a 4-2 to a 4-4. Basically a strict upgrade. Has fallen a bit flat since release. Even during the height of Zabu's might, she was a low-performing 4-cost card, and we'd like to give her a better chance to shine. This buff is simple, but highlights that Shawna wasn't appropriately being compensated for needing 4 available slots to hit her ceiling. In general, cards and decks that fill many slots early are safer to make strong, since there's plenty of game left to react or retreat, and their ability to gain cubes is impeded. This is especially true in Shawna's case, where the randomness and existence of things like Killmonger make her riskier. So, the average 1 cost that Shawna generates is like just under 2 power, which means in theory, Shawna is approximately 10 stats for 4 energy now. With obviously some swing in there, you could low roll and get a -2 with the hood, but you could also high roll and fill your path with an Ebony Maw or a Titania, getting more than 2 points. But on average, about 10 across 4 bodies. We'll see. I mean, this is a strict upgrade. Maybe this is reasonable. Our next one's a nerf. This is an interesting one. Lizard. We are now -4 power on Lizard if the opponent has 4 cards here. When one card becomes a clear outlier on play rate because it's playable in a huge number of decks, that's something we flag and keep an eye on. That doesn't mean we always take action. It's important to us to keep in mind that the series structures can serve to make cards appear overplayed when they're actually just widely available, because Lizard is an early series card. That makes sense. However, when we have a clear top card for cost and can slice a bit of strength away from it without necessarily dethroning it, that's a solid change for us to make. This is a good change because this makes Lizard a little bit more of a build-around card. You can't just play Lizard as a generically good 2-drop and always get the payoff all the time. With Lizard, you now want to consider Enchantress, you want to consider Zero, you want to consider Stegron was released recently. This could also just open it up more in terms of being played other 2-drops in that slot. It makes Scorpion potentially more appealing. It makes Jeff more appealing. Makes Luke Cage as a combo card with this, or something like Killmonger to open up your opponent's board. So there's a lot of cards you could pair with Lizard. And I think this change is really good because it means Lizard is no longer a just generically good 2-drop. It's a card where, okay, if I put Lizard in my deck, I probably want to put 1 or 2 other cards that synergize with it as well. So it takes it from a, this is a best in slot 2-drop to a, this is a 2-drop that has a deck building consideration. So I think this is a very good change. Sandman. Oh, there's a big paragraph here. Okay. We are now a 5-3. Strict downgrade here, but Jeff, it's better with negative. Fuck you. You know it's not. Since Sandman changed from a 4-1 to a 5-5, we've seen him become a foundational piece of an electro-based strategy that slows down the opponent and makes his effect feel asymmetrical by contesting multiple lanes with Doctor Doom or just some heavy hitters. That's certainly the deck we expected to see, but it's become more popular than we'd like. This tap on the main man makes him less of a competitive source of power, giving an added edge to players committing cards early and making endgame choices from each player more ultimately to determine the outcome of the game. Yep, I mean, yep, I'm glad they agreed there was too much Sandman. The deck probably still exists. Honestly, the big thing this makes me think here, this is a consideration too, both of these changes hit the Sandman deck, right? Like, the Sandman decks often played Lizard, but couldn't afford to play synergy cards with Lizard. And this Sandman change kind of makes it so it's going to be more important for Sandman decks to play cards in the early turns. Like, with Sandman only having 3 power, it means if you go no plays on 1, no plays on 2, Electro on 3, Sandman on 4, you only have 5 stats in play at that point in the game, which a lot of decks could keep up with. So this hopefully is enough to knock Sandman out of position number 1. Our last change here, let's tab her down so there's not this awkward line break in the middle. This one is gets a little bit of an eyebrow raise from me. Enchantress, a strict buff from 4/4 to 4/6. It's been particularly telling that in a world where Armor, Patriot, Darkhawk, Dinosaur, Sandman, Blue Marvel, and even Null are major players, that Enchantress is a poor performer on both popularity and actually winning. That's actually a good observation. There are mitigating factors, of course, energy curves, priority battles, and so forth, but ultimately she is not currently functioning as a solid counter for ongoing cards, especially the symmetrical ones that Rogue can't interact with. Hopefully this change lets her contest locations in addition to neutralizing major power problems like Darkhawk and reclaiming a big turn 6 from an early Sandman. That's actually an interesting observation. So giving her more power could mean that maybe it's worth spending your turn 5 to Enchantress their turn 4 Sandman. So she's getting more power and Sandman's getting less. In a way, this is opening up counterplay to early Sandman. I think that's a good thought process from the way this could impact play patterns. And I also like that's not something that I had even considered when I looked at these numbers. So I like that whoever wrote these out is explicitly calling that. I think that's really good analysis on their part. I also think this is a good observation here that, like, okay, all of these ongoing cards are being played in the top decks, but Enchantress still isn't performing. So we need to do something. And making her a 4/6 is interesting. Like, that's a big stat line change. Like, 4/6 means if you're just playing a tempo Enchantress on rate, it's pretty good. I also think, and this is something that's noteworthy here too, is they nerfed Lizard above, right? But Lizard and Enchantress is a soft combo. And they're a 2 plus a 4. Like, Lizard plus Enchantress has been a turn 6 a number of times during Marvel Snap's history. And now Lizard plus Enchantress on turn 6 is 11 power plus Enchantress's effects. And 11 for 6 is a little bit below rate when you're just looking at the stat line. But it's above rate when you consider the disruptive elements you're going to be getting with it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, as a serial Galactus hater, nothing towards that makes me a little bit sad. But I will say that Second Dinner continues to make changes that make sense in my mind. Especially, like, the Enchantress one, I think, is the one change on this list that I would be apprehensive about if I was just looking at the list of changes. But this articulation here really makes me think, okay, they're making this change for a good reason. There's a goal here that they're trying to have happen. And I also, and this is a big thing too, with weekly OTA updates, if they take a shot like this and they miss, it's not like we have to wait a month for them to unfuck it up, right? Like, if this ends up being bad for the metagame and she's an auto-include and this is too many stats, they just fix it next week, right? Like, it'll probably take us 3 or 4 days to figure out if it's fucked up. We'll probably know by Monday or Tuesday. And then if they need to make a change, they could make it next week. And that is why the regular OTA balance candidates that we're going to have here through the end of May, I think is so good. Because they don't have to be afraid to shoot their shots, and they don't have to be stressed out or worried about getting everything perfect, because if it's not perfect or if they over adjust or miss, they can just fix it pretty quickly again. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is a lot of good here. I think the justifications look good. We're going to start with some Shawna because she's the biggest buff here, obviously, that we can build some decks around. I think we're going to start with no Dazzler because I think Dazzler is still kind of a bad card. We'll get to some Shawna Dazzler eventually, but let's start with some Shawna without Dazzler. I think she has some potential. And if you are watching this on YouTube, thanks everybody in my Twitch chat that hung out live for this. We're going to be streaming here for a few more hours today, and I'm live on twitch.tv/Jeff Hoagland Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. Central till about 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 p.m. Central. If we're having a good show, drop on in sometime.